The Devil May Cry series has gone through quite a lot, especially for a series with such a low game count. 5 main installments and a reboot side game. I mean, it went from being Resident Evil 4 to the action classic we all know and love, Devil May Cry. Devil May Cry 2 speaks for itself in regards to the development hell it went through, leaving a final product that honestly leaves me more impressed with the fact that it's even playable at all, with a reasonably coherent story to boot. Like, if you ask me, DMC2 should be a lot worse than it is, but I've always had a guilty pleasure for that game. Honestly, I think Mega Man X7, one of Capcom's other embarrassments from 2003, is far more chitinous. Devil May Cry 3 was one of the greatest course corrections in gaming history, still being one of the most revered action titles of all time. Devil May Cry 4 also suffered from production issues, not to the extent of DMC2, but still enough to where the game didn't live up to its full potential. But I can talk more about DMC4 later. I haven't played DMC at all since my review of it, but the pre-release of that game was quite the headache and a half, with the actual game being a solid action experience, especially once it really gets going towards the end, but it suffered from a slow start, a terrible story, and also the original release was bogged down by that early 7th gen jank in the frame rate department, only in 2013. When I first reviewed the Devil May Cry saga, I was fairly new to it, as the comments on the DMC4 review in particular would highlight. When I first got into Devil May Cry games just 2 summers ago, man was I in for a treat at E3 that year. Devil May Cry 5. And the best part, I'd only had to wait like 8 months to play it, whereas fans waited 11 years for this game. After nothing but ports and remasters for years on end, Dante and Nero were back in Ultra HD alongside the mysterious newcomer, V. March 8th, 2019. I was ready. I pre-ordered the game, skipped school. Sorry, Rob, but every gamer in high school needs that badge of honor. Waited for the store to open, and then I could finally play DMC5. And play I did. You can ask my friends on Discord about it, but there had to be a period of at least several months where I played DMC5 like almost every day. I don't even want to know how many hours I have on this game, since I think it would put Mega Man X3 to shame. A lot of folks have asked me to review this game, which I totally get. I mean, I reviewed all the other games, so it would make sense. However, I wanted to just enjoy the game for what it was without thinking about making a review. That and everyone else and their mother would tell you my perspective on it. But now that the game's been out for a year, the hype has died down significantly. Maybe it's time to give Devil May Cry 5 its time in the sun. Sorry in advance, I am a bit rusty with game reviewing as it's been a long time, but also, full spoilers inbound. Now let's begin. Speaking of spoilers, I went into this game completely blind. When I found out the release date, that was all I really needed to know. Didn't watch any trailers after that point. I was really hoping to have a fresh and fun experience with this game. To that end, I wasn't sure how many characters were going to be playable. I mean, Trish and Lady were part of the promotional material as much as the other 3, which scared me at first because this had been a problem previously in the series. I thought there were going to be some kind of campaign for all these characters, but no, there's one story to follow that trades off perspectives and occasionally intersects as you play as Dante, Nero, and V, each with their own unique flair to add to DMC's stylish gameplay. This is always how I've enjoyed multiple playstyles. Every character adheres to the same central mechanics while doing their own thing on top of that. That's one area the series has never had to worry about before, and I'm glad it's still that way. The game begins with Nero and V on their way to aid Dante in the battle against this new demon called Urizen, who captures Trish and Lady, defeating Dante as his whereabouts are unknown from that point on, as Nero is the focus character in the early acts of the game, as he and V need to sever the Clifod roots growing through the city that power Urizen, as well as track down the Devil Sword Sparta to potentially give them a fighting chance. Nero's gameplay in DMC4 was used to introduce new players to Devil May Cry, as Dante's expanded gameplay from DMC3 would probably be a bit of a turnoff for newcomers. But Nero's playstyle was far more complex than I gave credit for in DMC4. In that review's comments, I was rightfully informed that my saying Nero's style got old was unfair because I never used the more involved mechanics of his chargeable sword, Red Queen. Normally how this functions is that you press the exceed button a few times to increase the power by 1 level for 1 hit for a maximum of 3 levels. If you use it that way, it's hardly useful in the height of the battle because that takes time and would kill style. But if you time the button press to Nero's animations, you can increase your level mid-combo, which is where the addictive quality of Nero's gameplay comes from. Once I discovered this, it's hard for me to be remotely tired of playing as Nero, as tests of timing skills like this is endlessly rewarding. It's actually to the point where now I'm better at Nero than Dante, although I still prefer playing as him. This doesn't quite save DMC4 for me though. I mean, you could go on all day about the unfinished nature of the game, the lack of content, the lame content therein, but for me, a big thing I have against DMC4 is just that I don't find the enemies fun to fight for a large percent of them. The mechanics can carry it to where it's great fun, but I don't enjoy fighting those flying enemies, nor these electric ones, which Bloody Palace loves to spam on the higher floors. With my newfound appreciation of Nero's style established, this carries over gracefully into Devil May Cry 5. When I first played this game, it was actually kind of weird to have to purchase abilities I got so used to using in DMC4, which reminds me I didn't start a new save file for my review of that game or this one. I'm reviewing the game to look at how much fun I'm having with it now, a year later, so it only seems natural to play the whole game at max potential. And on the Son of Sparta difficulty mode. Anyway, Nero still has Red Queen and Blue Rose, which has an ultra powerful charge shot that works great on bosses in between sword slashes and exceed timings. To get the most out of this, I recommend mapping the shoot button as Nero to one of the shoulder buttons, allowing you to charge your gun while slashing enemies with the face buttons. It's so satisfying to launch yourself towards an enemy, blast with a charge shot, jump canceling with the enemy step feature, and basically all the other attributes that made Nero fun in the last game. With some new moves like this 3D Zelda-esque jump slash that comes really in handy, or the newly implemented air taunts which are useful as Dante to keep the air combo going. For V, it's just fun to watch, and for Nero, his air taunt of using his sword as a skateboard highlights the rebellious use side of his character, but it's also great for extending your jump time as you can jump, air taunt, air hike, air taunt, use devil wings for a third jump, unlockable after the final boss, and then air taunt again. The best part is the fact that you can actually use the timed exceed feature during an air taunt if you time it correctly, which I'm so glad I know about because the game doesn't really mention it, but it comes quite in handy. Now, a big shakeup for Nero's character in this game was the demonic arm he made usage of in the last game is now gone. Before the events of the game, Nero's arm that fused with the Yamato sword was straight up torn off and snatched by this demon who used its power to become Urizen, giving you, the player, a personal motive to defeat Urizen as all the characters. He took away a core mechanic from you that saw a lot of use last time, grabbing demons and slamming them around. You unlock this ability once more after the game is beaten alongside a Devil Trigger form for Nero, which opens up the combo pool even wider than before. But to make up for it in the meantime, Nero's mechanic friend Nico, who's one of my new favorite characters, has developed a plethora of robotic arms for Nero to make use of in combat. And thankfully, when you have your old arm function back from DMC4 after the game's over, you can make use of both systems at the same time just by simply mapping the buttons to whatever makes you the most comfortable. Anyway, these robot arms just add a lot of variety to the gameplay, allowing you to send beams all over the screen, slow down time for a brief bit, attach a bomb to the enemies, and this can also provide a lot of comedy as well, like the much appreciated Mega Buster, which allows you to shoot the standard lemons and a big charge shot. Also giving Nero the ability to slide like classic Mega Man himself. It's pretty cute, all things considered. However, there is some risk versus reward in play, as you should only use these powers whenever you feel like you have a clear shot, because otherwise taking damage will destroy that arm. You'll either have to find more in the stages or purchase more at the shop. You can also self-destruct with the press of a button, which can help you out of a jam if you need it, so it's good to use them only when it's most necessary, as you can only carry a maximum of 8 at a time. So all in all, I think this was a positive addition. The more variety in an action game, the better in my opinion. What really makes Nero a total badass to play as this time? Oh, it's the incredible battle theme. Nero's theme, the main theme of the game, Devil Trigger. I know it's not everyone's cup of tea, but it's absolutely mine, as this fast-paced, energetic beat with the blood-pumping lyrics gets me hyped up to chain those combos and kick demon ass every time. I listen to this song all the time, but not just in real life. I listen to it every chance I get in the game itself. In the main menu, there's a bunch of side content and behind-the-scenes artwork to sink your teeth into, but most importantly of all, the jukebox where you can listen to the themes of each character. Devil Trigger for Nero, Crimson Cloud for V, and Subhuman for Dante, alongside 3 tracks from each of the previous games you can get as DLC. I think Devils Never Cry from DMC3 fits really well for Dante, Shoot the Works from DMC2 fits Nero pretty well, and the Nello Angelo boss theme from DMC1 fits V. However, I just set Devil Trigger to the theme of every character and I hold no regrets. Now, what I was most cautious of going into this game was the new character, V, and his brand new gameplay. Since V is an experimental playstyle, the developers opted to give him the least amount of mandatory missions, which I appreciate. Unfortunately, while I think V is perfectly fine and playable, I just couldn't get into it. The idea is pretty interesting. V himself is very weak, so to make up for that, he summons demons that Dante battled in Devil May Cry 1. Shadow, Griffin, who is a pretty entertaining personality throughout the story, and Nightmare, who can only be summoned when V accesses his DT. Which, in case you forgot, DT is short for Devil Trigger, not the song, the ability in the games. These particular devils should serve as good foreshadowing as to who V truly is, since he was the one who first contacted Dante about this job to begin with. Not to mention his reaction to the Nello Angelo look-alike enemies.
Nice. Getting the band back together, huh?
What evil lurks, I must destroy.
I thought that was the plan all along.
Back to the gameplay. Even though I changed the controls to where Griffin was on the shoulder buttons and Shadow was on the face buttons, V just didn't grab me. Like I said, it's perfectly playable, so I'm not going to shut off the console because I don't feel like playing this section like I might in a gimmicky section from other games I enjoy. But what's the problem then? Well, when playing as V, I felt like I wasn't really doing much outside of button mashing. I'm sure the Combo Mad community has pulled off some really cool stunts and feats with V and his familiars, but I enjoyed playing as him the least for this sole reason. When I'm trying to keep V safe while commanding two demons to attack, my mind just resorts to spamming attacks and waiting for the enemies to die so I can land the killing blow as V. There's a lot to like in his gameplay though. The aforementioned killing blow moves are always satisfying. V's unique personalities conveyed well in his taunts and animations, and I like the fact that your familiars have health bars, and if you want to replenish them faster, you have to be in close vicinity to them, putting yourself at risk of damage from the enemies. It's clear that a lot of thought did get put into this, but I just didn't think it was all that fun to play. I should mention that I did have more fun as V in the second highest difficulty mode, Heaven and Hell. The gimmick for this mode is that you have 3 hits before you get a game over, but in return the enemies all die in 1 hit. As V in particular, I thought this was more satisfying because flying across the room ripping demons apart with the killing stroke is just really fun. As I mentioned before, this review is primarily based on the Son of Sparta difficulty mode, as on my first playthrough, I thought the Devil Hunter mode was fun, but I thought it was a bit easier than say my first playthrough of DMC1 or 3 on normal. My increased Devil May Cry skills have something to do with that of course, but I thought it was worth bringing up. Son of Sparta just feels the most balanced to me. I've never actually played the game for more than like 2 missions on human mode, the easiest selection because, well, it's the easiest. After you beat Son of Sparta mode, the series tradition Dante Must Die is unlocked. It certainly lives up to the name since most of the gold orbs I had built up in my months of playing the game beforehand were burned through. However, like I alluded to before, I think Son of Sparta is the most balanced difficulty mode in the game. Because on DMD, I thought the game was harder for sure, but not more rewarding as the enemies took forever to kill. Like in Dante's first mission, I was almost getting bored of fighting enemies. As Dante, if that tells you anything. It was DMD where I learned just how much V wasn't my thing, as he was the character I died the most as. I don't think it was unfair or bad design that led to that, I'm just trying to illustrate my experience with the game. But it is to the point where every time I get the choice of characters between Nero and V, I always pick Nero, and when it's the 3 hunters...
Do you have to ask?
Hold on, Dante, we can get to you in a moment. I mentioned that Dante Must Die is back, and that mode is basically tradition at this point, yes? DMC5 honors tradition, when it serves the gameplay. This is something that Mega Man can really learn from. When crafting a more modern experience, DMC5 is totally willing to toss old ideas in the rubbish barrel. Case in point, the continues system. DMC1 had lives and game overs, which DMC2 changed into gold orbs reviving you after death. And DMCs 3 and 4 kept it that way. In all the games, green orbs refilled your health bar, and you could buy them in the shop alongside orbs to refill your DT gauge. DMC5 opts for something far cooler, which I didn't even see coming. None of the characters can carry health ups like that anymore. Instead, you can mass as many gold orbs as you want, and when you die, you can choose to spare one of them for a complete health and DT restore. Or you can choose to spend the currency, red orbs, to refill your health in a very tiny amount for a low cost, which is useful if you're about to beat the boss and are confident you can take him with just a little bit of health. You can do a medium amount of restoration for a middling cost, or a full restore for a high price, which also deals out high damage to nearby enemies and bosses. But you have to be careful with this as the cost of red orbs restores goes up with each use. I love this as it adds strategy to death that wasn't there before. I have like 7 million red orbs at this point, so the cost is no concern, but I do have to avoid abusing the system as it will lower my rank if abused too much. So I can't get cocky and still must perform those stylish combos if I want to get that S, which is great. I already applauded DMC5's excellent grade A soundtrack, and thankfully the presentation is just as top tier. These kinds of games just never really look that amazing. Like MGR and DMC Devil May Cry are no Last of Us, which came out the same year. But no, I think Devil May Cry 5 is one of the best graphical experiences of the generation. All the models are extremely detailed with care and attention given to the minor stuff like Dante's hair blowing in the wind. His as well as Nero's and V's coats moving in realistic fashion. Dante isn't just going to pull up his guns like he's done in previous games, he's going to whip them out with a spin. It's great. The lighting is fantastic as the game has a lot of colorful and intense looking effects as well as a wide variety of locations. All of which are areas I think this game has over MGS5 with its barren overworld. This game also has beautiful cinematography and motion capture work as the game just feels like a next-gen Devil May Cry game, with Dante, Nero, and Virgil all being voiced by their classic actors, making it feel like we're picking up right where we left off. To top it all off, much like MGS5, this game runs at 1080p and also 60 beautiful frames per second. I think a game like DMC5 really shows how much other games have to learn from this game, as there's no reason 60 FPS can't be a standard in games like Uncharted or Spider-Man, when MGS5 and DMC5 can do it. The only technical issue I do have with this game is that I felt the loading screens on console were a bit longer than my liking, but when loading graphics and assets like this, I totally understand, and it certainly doesn't bog down the experience, just something I felt needed to be said. Now, let's talk more about the story. As I complained about in the past, DMC5 has changed the way the timeline works, but looking back, I actually think it works pretty well. DMC3 and DMC1 are the origin games where Dante discovers his devil form, loses Virgil, and defeats Mundus. The DMC animated series and DMC2 are the Dante beats the shit out of demons part of the timeline, and DMC4 and 5 are the Nero parts of the timeline. It all works. On that note, chronologically, past DMC1, Dante is seriously unstoppable. This is another reason why Nero needed to exist, because there weren't that many challenges left for this guy, as DMC2 showed. DMC5 does a great job contextualizing Nero's mission to fight against Urizen with the whole lost arm thing, but it does an equal job as Dante, as he starts the mission completely confident that it was over before it even began.
Listen, I'm gonna find Lady and Trish. Bring him in on this.
What? Come on, you don't think I can handle this gig on my own?
It's a big job. Big job, Dante. You're gonna need the help.
But in the prologue, Dante was defeated by this Urizen, and Rebellion, the sword we've been using since DMC2, and we were told in DMC3 that it was from his father, gets destroyed. How in the hell are we gonna beat Urizen now? As the story unfolds and Dante returns, V reveals that Urizen is just the devil form of Virgil. Suffering defeat after defeat, Virgil sought out his sword, Yamato, from Nero's arm. He used it to separate man from demon. The demon side became Urizen and is unleashing all this havoc, while the human side became V. Too weak to do anything, he sought the aid of Dante and company, which gives Dante the idea to join man and demon with the Rebellion, creating the Sin Devil Trigger mode. When you unlock it, you're like, holy shit, Urizen better look out. And the form itself does not disappoint. First, I must compliment the fact that the Sin DT Dante's basic abilities are very reminiscent of the Majin Devil Trigger form from DMC2. This is far better implemented, as the Sin DT is not a win button. It's very powerful and will definitely tip the scales in your favor, but you can still die with it if you aren't careful. But back to the story, you really want to see V conquer his lust for power as he had as Virgil, but in the end, he just can't and merges with Urizen to become Virgil once more, setting up the climax of the game and my look at Dante's character. It's no secret that I think Dante is the best character to play as in every game, with DMC5 being the absolute best. I know DMC3 now has style switching mechanics, which is great, but if my experience with PC style switching is anything to go off of, it's certainly fun and more to my speed after so much DMC4 and 5 playtime than the vanilla version of DMC3, but Devil May Cry 5 Dante is just where it's at. DMC4 Dante is more complex and definitely has a higher skill ceiling than DMC5, which is why you'd still see me go back to that game since I still haven't quite mastered him there. And actually, I wouldn't call myself a master of any DMC game by any stretch of the imagination, but I have put a lot of playtime into Dante in this game, and I think I'm really good. There are only 4 styles to use this time around, as it was this game where I finally got to grips with Royal Guard as a mechanic, and I can't get enough of it. I literally audibly laugh from the sheer satisfaction that comes from a well-timed royal release against a boss fight.
Scared, are you?
What I thought DMC3 was held back by was the 2 weapons at a time system, and then DMC4 was held back by weapons I didn't really like using that much, which is where DMC5 comes in as the best Dante. First, I don't think Dante has ever handled better. The controls in Devil May Cry 5 are just so fluid and responsive. Every hit feels like something you could have avoided with a well-timed dodge, which is as cathartic as ever when you do it. Back to Dante though, the Rainstorm ability that's been a series mainstay since DMC2 now allows you to change your position in the air. The only way to do that before was with DMC4's inertia mechanic, which is again more technical and requires skill to do, unlike in DMC5, but still, any degree of extra control is welcome in my eyes. Dante has a vast roster of devil arms and firearms in this game. His classic pistols are back, he gets the rocket launcher from DMC3, and later unlocks another one for more crazy combos where you launch a rocket below you, extending your airtime combos. There's the classic shotgun with the awesome slide towards the enemy move, love using that. And there's Dr. Faust, which uses your red orbs as an attack. If you get hit, you'll lose red orbs, but if you do damage to the enemy, you're rewarded with more. Perfect risk versus reward gameplay. To get the most out of these, you need to use the gunslinger style, and to get the most out of the devil arms, switch it over to Swordmaster. Rebellion's air combos have always been limited to Swordmaster, and the same applies for DMC5 for both Rebellion and the Devil Sword Sparta. But in a moment of great fan service, when Dante unlocks the Sin DT, with it he gets the Devil Sword Dante. The best one in the game for its Virgil-esque projectiles, but also because you can use its air combos with Trickster or Gunslinger, which would have been very useful in DMC3 especially. While at first you must choose which of these swords you'll be using, after you beat the game you can unlock the ability to have all 3 swords on your weapon wheel, which means that you can do 2 round trips with Rebellion and DSS, while doing a stinger with DSD. Not the most practical, but certainly fun to watch. The classic nunchucks are back from 3, but now they've been expanded to include electric and fire properties. That's how you reinvent an old weapon. Give it completely new functions, making a weapon that a PS2 action game could only dream of having. Since DMC2 and 3, the series has been toying around with the idea of a motorcycle weapon, but now it's finally here. Honestly, I wasn't sure how this one was gonna work, but holy shit, it's amazing to just shred through enemies, plowing through them with the spikes on the end, doing legit combos with a damn motorcycle. This game plays so well. I don't know why this was done, but also for DLC you can get an upgraded cycle that just goes flying in midair, and this is some badass shit. With this much customization, I just can't say I prefer playing as any other Dante. I tried for months to beat Bloody Palace as Dante in this game. My highest was like stage 86 or something, but then I unlocked Super Dante, which completely breaks the game, and I knew this was how I was finally gonna beat the mode. Despite much of the challenge being removed thanks to this, I was on the edge of my seat by the end, just seeing how close I was to finally winning, and when I did, it's a moment of pure joy I can barely describe right now. Moments like that is how you know a game has stuck with me. And that brings me back to the story, and I must say I don't think it's perfect. DMC3 is seriously a perfect story, so that game definitely has the edge in that category over this one, as this game has characters that just don't add anything, like Trish, Lady, and Kyrie, who doesn't even appear in the flesh for Pete's sake. The former 2 are just here because you'd wonder why they weren't if they weren't, so I get that, but it is a minor flaw I have with the plot. Back to the good stuff. I think this game has the wittiest dialogue in the series, with these characters bouncing off each other really well.
Hey, jackass! Did your mother ever teach you it's not nice to steal?
I must have every last drop to rule the underworld as king.
King? You? I don't know. I mean, you're a big guy and all, but you seem more like a knuckle-scrapping fart in the wind than anything else. Your reason, huh? I bet your parents didn't like you much, because your name sucks.
But your phone is disconnected.
You're a smart one, Morrison. You notice the electric and water out too?
I expected nothing less.
So what's the good news?
Oh, I got a gig. Cash up front.
Cash up front. This I like. The water needs turning on and those toilets need flushing. Well, well. O king of stench and filth. I'm impressed.
It comes off as really genuine and fun, and that gives the game a sense of sincerity, which allows for the story to have some really heartwarming and sad or engaging moments. The whole climax is just a streak of really good writing. Dante and Virgil face off in Mission 19, which is one of my favorite boss fights in the history of gaming. I've played this one countless times in the last year, perfecting my strategies, and it's just fun to face every time. Virgil's just such a well-designed boss fight that you can take a lot of the same moves from back in DMC3, add a crap ton of new ones to balance it out with how much more powerful Dante is, and you have a boss fight that's endlessly replayable. I also like how the game still manages to contrast the appearances of Dante and Virgil like DMC3 did, only now for their much older counterparts. But from a narrative perspective, this is the same fight from the end of DMC3, and it's gonna end the same way, but now Nero knows his true heritage. This passion unlocks his DT as he steps in and changes the outcome in a final battle against his father to the epic Silver Bullet theme, a remix of Devil Trigger. This brings Dante and Virgil to a truce for once as they enter the demon world to sever the Clifod roots, leaving Nero to run Devil May Cry and protect the human world. Honestly, leaving the future of the series on a very ambiguous note.
Don't you dare say it, jackpot!
This was just such a complete game, and getting to the theme of this video, 1 year later, removed from all the hype of there being this next-gen action game, Devil May Cry 5 is just a great game. I haven't played it much in the last few months before making this video, and I have to say it's just as good now as it was 1 year ago. A video like this or my MGS5 review aren't meant to see if it holds up in a Super Mario World way. I mean it in a, now that the hype is gone, how is the product? Devil May Cry 5 has fantastic production values, a lot of mechanical depth as Dante and Nero that will leave me coming back for many years to come, and while I didn't care for V, but because I enjoyed Dante and Nero so much and the game feels so finished, I think this is my favorite Devil May Cry. 3 is close for its fantastic package, but I have to give the edge to the better mechanics. It's not a perfect game, but it's everything I was personally looking for and then some. But like I said, it's unclear where the series should go from here. You could end it, you could make Nero the main character, as Dante's basically done it all at this point, but it would be hard to have a game without him though. I know what I'd like to see, but I'll be discussing that in the next video. In the meantime, I'm really glad to be back to game reviewing, and I hope that the script shows. Hope you guys enjoyed this video, and on that note, thank you all for watching, and I will see you next time.